commercial company in history to complete a fully successful moon landing. Congratulations to the entire team. This is such an incredible feat for Firefly, NASA, our nation, and the world as we pave the way for a lasting lunar presence.
Welcome back to Today in Space. I am, as always, your space science podcast host from the East Coast, Alex G. Orfanos. And today we're talking about the historic landing of Firefly Aerospace's Blue Ghost 1 mission. At 3:34 a.m. Eastern Time, Firefly's robotic lander touched down in Mare Crisium and solidified the Firefly team in space history as the first successful commercial company to ever land on the moon. This mission was packed with lunar payloads, excitement, and big steps forward for space progress. So buckle up and let's dive in. Thanks for joining us. The Blue Ghost Mission 1, also known as Ghost Riders in the Sky, is part of NASA's CLPS program, or Commercial Lunar Payload Services. It was designed to embolden private companies in America to develop their own service to deliver science and technology to the moon that'll be critical for the future of human space travel and human landings on the moon. You might be asking, why do this? Well, consider that a fully developed NASA mission that's designed for the best tech possible to make sure that failure is not an option means that mission is going to be very expensive. And if a NASA lander will cost $110 million, let's say, to build at NASA's specs, what if you spent a tenth of that on 10 separate missions and let American companies learn along the way? Not only would American companies benefit, but NASA could potentially have 5 to 10 times as many launches to the moon and opportunities to test technology than they could do by themselves. So Firefly Aerospace successfully landed on the moon on first try for 1/10 the cost that NASA would have. The adventure began January 15th, 2025, as the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket launched from Kennedy Space Center with Blue Ghost 1 as the payload, carrying 10 NASA instruments. Blue Ghost traveled over a month and a half to the moon before reaching lunar orbit and targeting its touchdown in Mare Crisium, an ancient lunar basin 500 kilometers wide on the near side of the moon. On March 2nd, 2:20 a.m. Eastern Time, the broadcast for the landing of Blue Ghost 1 began, and I managed to crawl myself out of bed, get some chai tea, and a snack to watch it live. We even tested the live stream moon landing hangout online, which was just fun to try. And I've been wanting to get back to live streaming for a long time, but inspired by some friends of mine who are streaming all the time, I just dove in and gave it a try. And while I still have a lot of work to do, and some of the same problems still exist, we can bring back launch hangouts again. It's something we did years ago on the podcast, and I'm looking forward to doing that. So make sure to follow us at Today in Space Pod on Instagram and X, Today in Space on TikTok, and Blue Sky, and Today in Space on YouTube for more hangouts in the future. So make sure to jump in the chat, say hi, and bring your questions. But exciting note aside, let's dive into the timeline here. So at 2:49 a.m. Eastern Time, after some amazing views of the lunar surface from orbit, Blue Ghost 1 completed its descent orbit burn to begin a controlled descent from over 100,000 meters in altitude, or 328,000 feet. The engine stayed off to coast for another 30 minutes. And at 3:22 a.m. Eastern Time, the powered descent was initiated. This 9-minute burn using all engines used D'Souza guidance, a fully autonomous engine firing that reduced Blue Ghost's velocity from 1,700 to 40 meters per second, or 3,800 miles per hour, down to just 90 miles per hour. And the system at this point was running fully autonomously. While not AI, it is a powerful automatic procedure powered by a human-developed approach with D'Souza's guidance, from whom it was named after. And the last chance to back out was just after the descent orbit insertion was started during that 9-hour descent orbit insertion. So at this point in the mission, it was all up to the automated system, and it was make or break. But at 3:32 a.m. Eastern Time, the powered descent completed, and the Spectre RCS thrusters performed the final descent using pulses to drop the velocity to only 1 meter per second before touchdown. Blue Ghost had multiple sensors on board to know that it had landed, including vision navigation, throw switches on the foot pads from contact, and a gravimetric sensor to verify the gravity on the moon based on the altitude that they were at. And at 3:34 a.m. Eastern Time, Blue Ghost had successfully touched down on the lunar surface, and Firefly Aerospace became the first commercial company to successfully land on the moon. But it wasn't just Firefly Aerospace that was successful, but NASA and all the people that worked across all 10 of those payloads under the CLPS program. It was a big day for the American space program, and the first of many missions under the CLPS program to empower American companies to do what NASA has so gloriously done before with the Apollo program, going to the moon. And we don't need to wait long for the next one, as the Intuitive Machines IAM-2 mission with their Nova-C lander is expected to land on the south pole of the moon on March 6th, and that Athena lander will give its next shot at touching down on the moon. And after the first low-res image from the lander came in about 20 to 30 minutes later, we closed up the Hangout stream and I crawled back into bed for a few more hours of rest before the day began. I can only imagine what the Firefly Aerospace team must have felt. What a rush that must have been to successfully land on the moon on your first attempt after just being at it for 2 years hardcore. I bet that adrenaline crash later was crazy. What about the science on the moon? Now that the Blue Ghost 1 mission is on the moon, the science begins. And right now, early reports show that all the instruments were operational, and they have basically 14 days of sunlight to test and get readouts from the instruments. And that'll be broken up into 2 phases. And they got to get this done and started before the lunar night sets in during this continuing lunar cycle. Now, if you want to learn more about the instrument on board Blue Ghost 1, you can go to fireflyspace.com, but some highlights from the 10 instruments on board are Lexi, an X-ray imager, which is scanning solar wind interactions, or Luger, which is testing GPS and Galileo nav satellite signals on the lunar surface. Lister is preparing to drill into the moon's crust to measure lunar subsurface heat. Scalps captured footage of lunar dust during landing to help scientists understand the plume effects, because lunar dust is really the biggest problem that we have going to the moon. It gets everywhere. It's terrible. We talked about this during the launch hangout, but most of the Apollo astronauts that went up there, if not everybody, complained of, airway and nasal issues, and basically lunar dust gets literally everywhere, and that's even through an astronaut spacesuit that is ideally pressurized in a way that they're able to operate in the vacuum of space. But other science on here, like RAC, is studying how lunar dust sticks to materials, which is going to be really important for us to understand how this is going to work for astronaut spacesuits and equipment in general. And it doesn't stop there. There's plenty of other science payloads on there, including others like Copernic Space's digital art gallery that's on board there. So anyone in the Web3 space, NFTs, cryptocurrency, that's a pretty big thing. And it's actually not the first NFT digital artwork to be sent to the moon. Intuitive Machines' IAM-1 mission had artwork on there as well. And I expect that to continue. And it's pretty cool. Definitely futuristic. And I wonder how that would work. Is that going to be something for us as like a goalpost, a trophy to win as we get back to the moon, where you'll be able to go up there and then tap into that digital museum essentially and have all this amazing stuff there for us waiting? Sounds like a pretty cool reason to go back to the moon, among many others. So what to expect this week? Well, more images, videos, and science. The payloads are beginning, the science has started, and we've already received the image from Mare Crisium with the lunar surface in front, the shadow of Blue Ghost from the sun behind it, and then Earth in the background behind the shadow. Really, really beautiful. Then NASA and Firefly shared the landing video from orbit, the full descent. That's worth checking out. That'll be on NASA Plus or Firefly's YouTube page. And then this week, March 3rd, Firefly and NASA should be holding a press conference if they haven't already, and that'll break down the first data and how the spacecraft, lander, and all the payloads are doing. Then March 3rd, key instruments like LISTER will drill, and then the Regulus collection system will begin analyzing, and basic science begins. And then March 6th, Intuitive Machines Athena lander for IM-2 is set to touch down near the lunar South Pole, which is where the next human activity is going to happen with the NASA Artemis mission. And so we wish the IM-2 mission team lots of luck on their second attempt landing on the moon. You guys were so close last time. Let's stick the landing. Good luck. And then March 9th, Blue Ghost's surface mission should wrap up phase 1. That's where teams are going to start prepping the next week for the incoming lunar darkness and finish up all the scientific payloads and give its best chance at surviving the next 14 days of lunar darkness. And that wraps up today's episode of Today in Space. Thank you for joining us on the All Things Space Science podcast. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to subscribe and follow us on social media for the latest in spaceflight science and the journey to the moon and beyond. We'll be hanging out for the Intuitive Machines Athena moon landing on March 6th, so make sure to follow us there. Hop into the chat and say hi, and don't forget to bring in your questions. We'll be doing live Q&A anytime we hang out, so bring it. Until next time, keep looking up, stay curious, and make sure to spread love and spread science. Be well. We'll see you next time.